One of my favorite memories as a kid was when my mom would have to make a trip to the Asian market for stuff we could only get over there. I was always jazzed because while she was shopping, I would be playing the old arcade cabinet of Marvel vs. Capcom 2 at the front of the store. I would spend maybe up to an hour and a half just playing the crap out of it. I was so thrilled and mesmerized by this game. It probably started with the bright, colorful energy blast and the Marvel comic book stuff because at the time I was a huge Spider-Man nerd. But as I kept playing the game, it no longer became just because of the cool aesthetic, but instead it was because I wanted to get better at it. And this started my love and obsession for fighting games. I love fighting games and fighting game adjacent things like beat 'em ups. I think there is something extremely charming about them. I love how a good fighting game feels. Now, I'm not the best at fighting games, and I've already said I'm not a pro gamer at all, but I love fighting games with my friends. I love trying to land super moves at the right moment, doing an insane fun combo, or parrying a strike. I don't know, I just kind of find that stuff to be really enjoyable. Also, fighting games are the closest thing I will ever get to actually being able to be in a real Dragon Ball Z karate fight. I love fighting games that have charm to them as well, whether it be just subtle sprite work or introduces new mechanics. So this is why I really love Windjammers 2 that just came out recently. So what is Windjammers? This is how I would describe this game. If you combine the mechanics of air hockey, throw in the Baywatch 90s neon aesthetic with a little dash of frenetic action of a fighting game, with the high-stake risk-reward feeling you get playing games like Dark Souls. I know after that last comment I probably lost a handful of you, because just because a game is hard, it doesn't mean it's like Dark Souls. That's a really old meme and I understand that. I will get back to why I say this later in the video, just bear with me, okay? You've gotten this far in the video, stay a little longer. Maybe like, subscribe, and share, that'd be pretty neat. Now that I've explained what Windjammers is, I do need to give a brief history of this game and the studio that produced Windjammers 2, .emu. Because I am so into Windjammers 2, I watched .emu's almost 30-minute long video on the creation of Windjammers 2 that it made me like the game even more. So originally the arcade game Windjammers was also known as Furayangu Power Disku, or Flying Power Disc in Japan. On a side note, that is a really cool ass name. Released by the now defunct company Data East for the Neo Geo arcade system, it came out in 1994 for arcades, but at the time it wasn't the most popular game, but it did pretty well, being ranked at least the 14th best arcade game at the time, and when it came out on the Neo Geo console, it sold 4,307 copies. And nothing was really heard about Windjammers until Data East went bankrupt, and the rights to Windjammers was bought out by a company, Payon DP, and released a port for the Wii stores in 2010. But taken off in 2013, making it the first and only Neo Geo port to be taken off the Wii store. Then, .emu were the ones who ported the original Windjammers to the PlayStation 4 and PlayStation Vita in 2017, and for the Switch in 2018, giving an online service to play people online. So this is where I'm going to talk about .emu. They are a French developer who worked mostly on porting old games to newer consoles. But it wasn't until they released the Wonder Boy 3 remake did you see what they could really do, turning this 8-bit adventure game to a beautiful 2D hand-drawn style. But they weren't done there, no. Lizard Cube artist who worked on Wonder Boy, Ben Fequat, wanted to do a remaster of Streets of Rage using the same 2D art style, but when the original programmer moved on to personal indie projects, .emu and Fequat approached Sega to make an actual sequel instead. And so they released Streets of Rage 4 last year. I think Streets of Rage 4 is a phenomenal game that I would like to talk about maybe in the future, but this was the game for me that put .emu on my radar for games because the art alone was aesthetically pleasing that I was like, hey, this is really cool. But then how well and fluid it plays was just chef's kiss, man. But the thing that was aggressively impressive was finding out that each playable character had almost 1,000 frames of animation, and the enemy characters had 300 to 400, which, holy cow, that is just incredible, and you can tell that they take these sequels and remakes that they are redrawing as a labor of love for the games, which made me excited for what they had to come. One of the things coming is a joint venture with Tribute Games, the ones who developed the Scott Pilgrim beat-em-up game. They're making a spiritual successor of TMNT in time in TMNT Shredder's Revenge, which triggers my little dumb idiot nostalgia brain because I love TMNT and I love beat-em-ups. Then you have Metal Slug Tactics, which is a tactics game using the characters from Metal Slug, which is one of my favorite game series and game genres because tactics games are just like chess, but you get to kill people. These two games alone had me hyped, but there was a wild card because in 2022, .emu was supposed to have 3 games come out. The first 2 I brought up haven't come out yet. They're coming out later on, knock on wood. But the third game I haven't talked about is Windjammers 2. Full disclosure, I knew nothing really about Windjammers as a series till this game came out. I played Windjammers once a year ago at a local arcade, and I was like, it's okay. Again, because .emu was making the sequel, I had my eye on it, and when I bought it, I had so much fun with this game. It feels so nice to play, and watching the documentary on the process on how they made Windjammers 2 makes me love this game even more. Not only did they use the same 2D hand-drawn style like you see in Streets of Rage or Wonder Boy, they built an entirely new game engine from the ground up, reverse engineering and taking from the original code of Windjammers and using it as the basis to bring Windjammers 2 into the modern era. Not only that, but the fact that they worked closely with the original creators of Windjammer, and also wanting it to be a legit sequel instead of a spiritual successor to the original Windjammers is amazing and interesting because there is a risk of calling this game Windjammers 2 instead of just Windjammers Plus or Windjammers New Game, because some people are just not going to play it because they've never played the first one. .emu brought the concept and game demo to the original dev team, people like the original game designer Tomo Adachi, and watching their reactions to the game was heartwarming because at the time they were filming this, Windjammers 1 came out over 25 years ago. This is a game that is a labor of love. Watching the documentary, you see a real passing of the torch from the original creators to .emu's team working on Windjammers 2. The care, the love, and passion this team has for the Windjammer series and how they want to make the game worthy to be the original sequel is so fucking heartwarming. The original goal was for Windjammers 2 to be released in 2019, but didn't come out till early 2021 because of multiple delays. But I guess I'm fine with that. I mean, we did have a pandemic, and I cannot reiterate this enough when I say this game is a labor of love, 3+ years in the making. I apologize if part of this video felt like it got hijacked with me gushing over .emu and the creation of Windjammers 2, but talking about these things, in my opinion, shapes why I think Windjammers 2 is a really good game. Fun fact, I am now going to talk about why Windjammers 2 is a good-ass game. I want to start with the aesthetics of the game. So Windjammers came out in 1994 and it was soaked in that bright neon color palette, and Windjammers 2 keeps up that drenched neon color palette of the late 80s and early 90s. Instead of trying to modernize the character or look and make them look more of our decade and generation, it keeps that 90s vibe and aesthetic, just like how these characters are dressed. The men are wearing shorter shorts and crop tops, Kay Weissel has both the mullet and goofy glasses, pro wrestling was big in the 90s, so you have a Canadian powerhouse, H-Max, with an Ultimate Warrior motif, in his character and winning animations looking like he just dropped a sick wrestling promo. Then you have the soundtrack to Windjammers that has a mix of light rock and synthwave going on that just keeps you amped. The one thing that I want to talk about with the look and feel of the game is the background stuff going on while you're playing the game. It's really charming and cool. I didn't notice the first few hours of playing the game because I was getting used to playing it, but when I was playing with friends because we were playing a slower game with more points and no time limit, it gave me a chance to vibe out and just take in the arena. You have things like the arena that looks like a pro wrestling ring and characters are just chillin', cheering, and are lifting weights while wearing like luchador masks. Then there's a junkyard, which is more like a bunch of street punks and whatnot. My favorite though is the OG beach with just this cool buff girl smiling and flexing, and that is what made Windjammers 2 an 100 out of 10 game because I love buff women flexing and living their best life. I just think the small animation of NPCs makes the game feel more lived in and does add that charm that I love in those games. The game dev team didn't have to do this, but they did it anyway. The next thing I want to talk about is that the game has 10 characters and none of them feel the same when you play them. So you wouldn't think that a game with the simple concept of throwing a frisbee to make goals would have much nuance to it, but it does. Each character, when you go over them, has stats. You can have more powerful characters, but they're slower, or you can have faster characters, but they aren't as strong. But you can be like me, who mains Esso because he feels like the most balanced character. He isn't the powerhouse that can do devastating pushbacks when throwing a disc, or isn't a speedster who can move around the field like a madman. He does each of these things well enough, but doesn't do it perfectly. The thing I like about this game is when you pick up a bigger, more powerful character, you can feel it. The first time I noticed this was when in the beginning I was playing a lot of H-Meta until my friend and I were playing and he was experimenting with different characters, so I did the same. The first character I chose that I wanted to try out was Jay Costa. When playing, I immediately noticed the difference because he played slower and felt much more chunkier in his movements. It is because I was used to playing a much faster and mobile character in H-Meta. Choosing characters creates a level of strategy. Fast characters can move around the ring way better, but at the cost of not having super strong disc throws, while powerhouse characters can throw powerful discs, but lose the speed to move around the arena fast and far. It's a juggling act, and learning to play a character to compete with both types is fun, which now leads me to the actual gameplay of Windjammers 2. So the gameplay looks simplistic, but there's a lot of strategy involved. After playing almost 10 hours of Windjammers 2, I bought the first game, which was ported on the Switch because they didn't have a Steam port, which is sad because that's what I'm usually playing my games on. Just to see the difference, and for the most part the gameplay hasn't really changed besides adding new mechanics that elevates the gameplay. The gameplay, like I said before, is a combination of Pong or air hockey mixed with Street Fighters and the risk-reward feeling of Dark Souls. So what do I mean when I say the risk-reward feeling of Dark Souls? Am I just not a real gamer that equates any hard game to Dark Souls? The answer is no. The game is easy to learn and hard to master. There is a philosophy of talking about hard games like Dark Souls that I live by today that I took from an audio review of Dark Souls from the nowdefunctspill.com, where the reviewer Professor Jeff says this: Dark Souls isn't hard, it's unforgiving, and that's how I feel towards the gameplay of Windjammers 2. Like I said, it is easy to learn but hard to master. In games like Dark Souls and Windjammers 2, when you lose or mess up and you get a point scored on you, it's on you, the game didn't glitch out. You lost that point because you didn't make the right decision. You can do a risky toss or charge move, but the person you face can do something else which throws off the rhythm you have and they can score points on you. But that's what makes Windjammers so fun though. There are mind games involved in playing this game. Are you going to try to throw that curve toss, or are you going to try to psych them out by lobbing it? Should you burn your meter? The gameplay of Windjammers 2 feels almost exactly like the original Windjammers. You have the same dash, your arsenal of throws from the straight throw, bounce hit, curve shots, and of course your charge shot, which are your character's special moves, as well as reversals to throw back a special move they thought they were going to use to score on you to try to score on them. And then of course the lob shot. But they've added a couple of new features that elevates this simplistic gameplay in a fun way. Slap shots can be used to slap away a disc as a sort of parry move, while a jump mechanic allows you to catch the frisbee midair and either throw it at a stronger lob or psych them out and perform another shot. And then we have a drop shot, which allows you to break the rhythm of the game and sack out your opponent. Plus a new charge shot with the charged lob that turns your disc into a spinning buzzsaw wheel of death. But the best thing introduced in Windjammers 2 is the meter. Like in fighting games, the meter can be used to do super moves such as special throws, powerful curve shots, and super lob shots, as well as be used to create control over the disc or stop it from hitting the ground. These new mechanics give the game more variety in what you can do, as well as the type of playstyle you want to have. You can play with more control of the stage, you can be more aggressive or defensive. The variety of how each character can use these new systems is very fun. The stages have their own dynamics as well. In some stages it is easier to score a 5-point goal, in others it's easier to score 3. If the frisbee is dropped on your side, there's a different point accumulation amount depending on the stage. Some of these stages have centerpieces in the middle that can be used to ricochet and change the dynamic of how you would throw the disc. Two stages that feel like wildcards and change the dynamic of the match continuously is the casino and junkyard. The casinos thing is very charming. The frisbee is now a gambling chip, and whatever the number is on the gambling chip is how many points you'll make if you score a goal or they miss a shot. It's a fun mechanic, but I feel like in online play it is abused by people because they will wait to use their full meter on an 8-point or 5-point disc just to burn through time. Then we have the junkyard, which I would say is my favorite stage to play on with friends because the centerpiece in the middle moves up or down depending on where the disc hits them, and then it creates a sense of broken rhythm in the match that makes it more strategic on how you should throw the disc. It makes the match, at least to me, feel more competitive as well. There are obviously some gripes that I have for the game, but I would consider these minor things. I would say that the lack of tutorial would turn people off of this game. You just get how-to instruction images and then they throw you right into the game. Online play and ranked are fun, but introducing lobbies and spectating events while waiting for your match would also make it interesting. As well as if a person leaves a ranked match, there isn't a penalty besides that you, the person who didn't leave, doesn't earn those ranked points. because they forfeited, as well as a lack of game modes because arcade and versus is useless unless you want to get really good at ranked matches or just playing with friends. There isn't much here, which is kind of sad because I think adding a few more modes would get people more into this game. There are mini games in between some of the arcade matches, like throwing a frisbee to a dog and catching discs, which I think would be cool as their own little arena thing in the main menu. Plus, the original Windjammers had a disc bowling game. The disc catching minigame would be a perfect replacement for the tutorial if tweaked a little, because that game helps you learn basic mechanics. Also, there's a lot of variety in the dude characters and it's really cool, and then you just have two female characters that are very similar in frame. I don't know, you have time to animate a buff girl in the background, why not have someone with that build in the game? I just think that would be cool to have a power hitter like that and a bit more variety of your female characters. But as I said, to me these are all minor nitpicks because at the time I am writing this, I have put in 20 plus hours into this game and I am still enjoying it. Now, I'm not out here saying go out and buy Windjammers 2 right now or else, but I did just want to talk about how much I adore this game. I saw that Streets of Rage 4 got a few DLC characters and a new game mode. I hope that there is enough of an audience that .emu could possibly do the same for Windjammers 2. As I play Windjammers 2, it kind of makes me feel nostalgic about a time I never experienced, and that was the arcade culture of the 80s and 90s. Like, I've played a ton of retro arcade places, but I will never experience watching other players play the game, placing my quarter on the stack to let people know I'm next. But playing Windjammers 2 in ranked and quick play is the closest to that feeling I will ever get, I suppose. But it also feels like an arcade game that has been modernized just enough to make it a better game than its predecessor. This upcoming year has a few games I'm looking forward to, and the fact that right out of the gate I loved Windjammers 2 makes me optimistic about the other games on my wish list. Hey, thanks for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed me gushing about an obscure game that was made in the 90s and its sequel. If you like it, give it a like, subscribe, and share. You can follow me on Twitter where I make bad hot takes. I'll be a little sporadic in February and March because I'll be moving, and so I probably won't have any big videos done, but I am working on a couple of big videos for April, so look out for that. And if you haven't heard it today, whatever you're going through, you got this, cowboy.